A little black girl with a heart full of compassion decided to share her sandwich with a homeless white man. That simple act of kindness was not just a gesture, it carried a powerful message about empathy and humanity in society. However, the next day, her life took a chaotic turn when the police showed up at her doorstep. What had happened? Did the homeless man have any connection to the girl? The story doesn't end there. Hidden secrets and truths will gradually be revealed, prompting everyone to rethink their prejudices and the lives of those they often consider invisible. Before we dive in, let us know. What time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. In the heart of New York City, nestled among its bustling streets and towering skyscrapers, lived 8-year-old Emma with her mother, Laura. Laura, a dedicated nurse, had raised Emma on her own in their modest apartment filled with warmth and love, evident in every corner of their shared space. Emma was a bright-eyed, curious girl, her laughter a frequent sound echoing down the corridors of their building. Her days were filled with the usual routines of a third grader: school, homework, and playdates. But unlike other children her age, Emma had a keen sense of awareness about the world around her, nurtured by Laura's caring and empathetic nature. Each day after school, Emma would hurry through her homework, eager to spend time at the nearby park. This little patch of green was her refuge, a place where she could run freely, her dark curls bouncing with each step she took. It was during these afternoons at the park that Emma first noticed David. David was a new figure in the landscape of the park, often found sitting alone on a secluded bench. His clothes were worn and tattered, and he carried the look of someone who had faced too many harsh winters. With a bushy beard and deep-set eyes, he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. From a distance, Emma could sense a deep sadness in David, a loneliness that tugged at her young heart. Her curiosity piqued, she began to observe him discreetly, wondering about his story. As the days passed, her innocent heart felt more drawn to the quiet man with the sad eyes. One sunny afternoon, emboldened by a feeling she couldn't quite understand, Emma decided to approach him. Clutching her favorite peanut butter and jelly sandwich, her mother's loving preparation, she walked up to the bench where David sat, staring blankly at the ground. "Excuse me, sir," Emma said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, mindful not to startle him. David looked up, surprised by the gentle voice addressing him. His blue eyes, though tired, reflected a gentleness that immediately put Emma at ease. "Yes, little one?" he responded, his voice hoarse from disuse. Emma extended the sandwich towards him, her small hand shaking slightly. "I thought you might be hungry. Would you like my sandwich?" David's eyes widened in surprise and then softened with emotion. He hesitated for a moment, looking from the sandwich back to the kind-hearted little girl standing before him. "That's very kind of you," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. "But are you sure? Don't you need it?" Emma shook her head, her curls bouncing. "I had a big lunch at school," she fibbed, not wanting him to feel bad. "Please take it. My mom always says sharing is caring." A smile, the first in what seemed like a long time, cracked David's weary face. Slowly he accepted the sandwich, his hands trembling. "Thank you," he murmured, unwrapping the sandwich with a reverence that made Emma's heart swell. "I'm Emma," she introduced herself, beaming up at him. "I'm David," he replied, taking a careful bite of the sandwich. Emma sat down next to him, her legs swinging as they dangled from the bench. The simple act of sharing a sandwich sparked a conversation between the unlikely friends. David spoke softly, telling Emma snippets of his story, as much as he could muster the energy to share. Emma listened intently, her young mind trying to understand the complexities of a world that had been so unfair to her new friend. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, signaling the end of their time together for the day, Emma stood up, her spirit a mix of sadness and hope. "I have to go now," she said reluctantly. "Will you be okay?" David nodded, his eyes twinkling with a light that had been absent before. "Thanks to you, I'm better than I've been in a long time. Take care, Emma." With a final wave, Emma skipped away, her heart light yet heavy. She couldn't wait to tell her mother about her new friend, unaware of how this small act of kindness would ripple through their lives in the days to come. Emma's excitement about meeting David filled her thoughts as she raced home. She was eager to tell her mother about the man on the bench who had accepted her sandwich so gratefully, making her feel as though she'd done something extraordinary. Once she reached their apartment, she threw open the door, the aroma of her mother's cooking filling the air. Laura looked up from the kitchen, noticing the extra sparkle in Emma's eyes. "Hey there, sweetheart. You seem excited. How was your day?" Laura greeted, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel and kneeling down to Emma's height. Emma beamed, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Mom, you won't believe it. I met this man in the park. He looked so sad. So I shared my sandwich with him. His name is David, and he told me I made him happy." Laura's smile faded slightly as her daughter's story unfolded. Her protective instincts immediately kicked in, yet she couldn't ignore the pride swelling within her at Emma's kind-hearted gesture. She put her hands on Emma's shoulders gently. "Emma, honey, you shared your sandwich with a stranger?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, her face alight with the innocence of her good deed. "Yes, Mom. He looks so grateful. You always tell me sharing is caring." Laura sighed, torn between admiration for her daughter's compassion and concern for her safety. "Sweetheart, that was very generous of you. But we have to be careful, okay? Not everyone we meet will be as nice as David might have been." Emma's face fell slightly, confusion clouding her bright expression. "But Mom, David wasn't scary. He was just alone and hungry." Laura pulled Emma into a hug, stroking her curls lovingly. "I know you have a big heart, Emma, and that's something I'm so proud of. But promise me you'll be more careful. If you see someone who needs help, come tell me first, and we'll figure out how to help together, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I promise, Mom." Laura smiled, ruffling Emma's curls. "That's my girl. Now, how about you help me set the table for dinner?" As they moved around the kitchen, setting out plates and silverware, Laura's mind wandered to Emma's story. She couldn't help but marvel at her daughter's instinctive compassion. Despite the challenges of raising Emma on her own, she knew she was raising a child with a heart of gold. Yet, as a mother, she couldn't shake a nagging worry about the potential dangers in the world beyond their cozy apartment. That night, after a warm meal and Emma's laughter filling the home, Laura tucked her into bed. She sat on the edge of the mattress, brushing Emma's curls away from her face as she settled under the covers. "Emma," she began softly, "I want you to know how proud I am of you for wanting to help others. It's a beautiful quality." Emma beamed up at her mother. "Really?" Laura nodded, smiling. "Really, but remember, there are safe ways to help people too. Maybe we could volunteer together at a local shelter or donate food to people who need it. That way, we can help safely." Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. "Can we do that, Mom? This weekend?" Laura chuckled softly. "Of course we can, sweetheart. We'll look into it tomorrow." Satisfied, Emma snuggled deeper into her blankets as Laura leaned down to kiss her goodnight. Just as she reached the door, Emma's small voice stopped her. "Mom?" "Yes, baby? Do you think David will be okay?" Laura paused, carefully choosing her words. "I hope so, Emma. Your kindness probably meant more to him than you know. There are people out there whose job it is to help folks like David. We can pray for him and hope that he finds the help he needs." Emma's eyes drifted shut, her expression peaceful. Laura quietly closed the door behind her, leaning against it and taking a deep breath. Moments like these, the innocent kindness in Emma's heart, made the challenges of single parenthood worthwhile. As Laura moved through the apartment, tidying up before bed, her thoughts kept returning to David. She couldn't help but wonder about his story. What could have led him to such hardship? It was a sobering reminder of how fragile life could be, how quickly one's circumstances could change. She thought about her own struggles, the long hours at work, the endless juggling of bills, and the sacrifices she made to ensure Emma had a good life. Finally, she settled onto the couch with a cup of tea, taking out her worn notebook, where she kept a list of dreams and goals. As she flipped through the pages, she added a new item: find ways to give back to the community with Emma. She realized that, while she might not be able to change the world, she could nurture the compassion in her daughter's heart, guiding it to grow in safe and meaningful ways. Together, she and Emma could make a difference, no matter how small. With a contented sigh, Laura finished her tea and headed to bed, a renewed sense of purpose filling her heart. Whatever challenges the next day might bring, she was ready to face them with Emma by her side. Little did she know, however, that Emma's simple act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would soon change their lives forever. The morning sun peeked through the curtains of Emma and Laura's apartment, casting a soft glow across the small living room. It was Saturday and the air was filled with the promise of a relaxing weekend. Laura was bustling about the kitchen, preparing breakfast, while Emma sat at the table, her legs swinging beneath her as she hummed a cheerful tune. "So, what do you want to do today, sweetie?" Laura asked, placing a plate of scrambled eggs in front of Emma. Emma's face lit up. "Can we go to the park again, Mom? Maybe we'll see David." Laura hesitated, remembering their conversation the night before. "We'll see, honey. Let's focus on breakfast for now, okay?" As they ate, Laura couldn't shake a nagging feeling of worry. She'd thought about Emma's encounter with David long into the night, torn between pride in her daughter's kindness and concern for her safety. She was about to suggest that they spend the day at home when a sharp knock at the door startled them both. "Who could that be?" Laura muttered, wiping her hands on a dish towel as she made her way to the door. She opened it, her heart skipping a beat at the sight of two police officers standing in the hallway, their expressions serious. "Good morning, ma'am," the taller officer said, his voice deep and authoritative. "I'm Officer Thompson, and this is my partner, Officer Jenkins. Are you Laura Bennett?" Laura nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. "Yes, that's me. Is everything all right?" Officer Thompson's gaze softened slightly. "We'd like to speak with you and your daughter. It's regarding an incident that occurred yesterday evening. May we come in?" Laura felt a wave of protective instinct surge within her as she glanced back at Emma, who was watching the scene unfold with wide, curious eyes. "Of course," Laura said, her voice tight. "Please come in." As the officers entered their small apartment, Laura called out to her daughter. "Emma, honey, can you come here for a minute, please?" Emma approached cautiously, her usual bouncy step replaced by a hesitant shuffle. She looked up at the towering officers, a mix of awe and apprehension on her face. Officer Jenkins knelt down to Emma's level, her voice gentle. "Hi, Emma. I'm Officer Jenkins. We just want to ask you a few questions about yesterday. Is that okay?" Emma nodded slowly, her hand reaching for her mother's. Laura squeezed it reassuringly, her heart pounding. "Why don't we all sit down?" Laura suggested, leading them to the living room. She and Emma settled on the couch, while the officers took seats in the adjacent armchairs. After a brief silence, Officer Thompson cleared his throat. "Emma, we understand that you met a man in the park yesterday. Can you tell us about him?" Emma's face brightened. "Oh, you mean David. He was sitting on the bench, and he looked really hungry, so I gave him my sandwich." The officers exchanged glances, a hint of surprise in their expressions. "That was very kind of you, Emma," Officer Jenkins said. "Can you remember what David looked like?" As Emma began to describe David, Laura's mind raced. Why were the police interested in him? Had something happened? Her grip on Emma's hand tightened unconsciously. "He had gray hair and a scruffy beard," Emma was saying, "and his clothes were kind of dirty, but his eyes were really kind, like Grandpa's." Officer Thompson nodded, jotting notes in a small pad. "Did David say anything to you, Emma? Did he tell you where he was from or where he was going?" Emma shook her head. "No, we just talked about the sandwich and how sharing is important. He told me I was special and that I should always be kind." Laura couldn't contain her worry any longer. "Officers, what's this all about? Has something happened to David?" The officers shared another look before Officer Thompson spoke, his tone gentle. "Ma'am, the man Emma met in the park, who we believe is named David, was found unconscious in the park later yesterday evening. He's currently in the hospital." Laura gasped, her free hand flying to her mouth, while Emma looked up at her mother, confusion etched on her young face. "Is David okay, Mommy?" Emma asked, her voice small. Before Laura could respond, Officer Jenkins interjected gently. "The doctors are taking good care of him, Emma. We're just trying to understand what happened." "But why are you asking Emma about this?" Laura demanded, her protective instincts flaring. "She's just a child who showed kindness to someone in need." Officer Thompson held up a placating hand. "We understand, Miss Bennett. We're not accusing anyone of anything. We're simply trying to piece together David's movements yesterday. Emma's interaction with him is the last confirmed sighting we have before he was found." As the officers continued to ask questions, Laura's mind whirled. She felt a confusing mix of emotions. Concern for David's well-being, worry about Emma's involvement, and a growing unease about the situation as a whole. Emma, for her part, answered the officer's questions with innocence and honesty. She recounted her conversation with David in detail, her face lighting up as she described how happy he seemed after she shared her sandwich. "Did David seem sick or injured when you met him, Emma?" Officer Jenkins asked gently. Emma shook her head emphatically. "No, he just looked tired and hungry, but he smiled a lot after we talked." As the questioning wound down, Officer Thompson turned to Laura. "Miss Bennett, we appreciate your cooperation. We may need to follow up with you in the coming days. Here's my card in case you remember anything else that might be relevant." Laura took the card numbly, her mind still processing everything that had happened. She showed the officers out, her heart heavy with worry and confusion. As she closed the door, she couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had somehow shifted, though she couldn't quite grasp how or why. When Laura turned back to the living room, she found Emma looking up at her, worry clouding her usually bright eyes. "Mommy, did I do something wrong?" Emma asked, her voice quavering. Laura's heart clenched. She knelt down, pulling Emma into a hug. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. You were kind and generous, just like we've always taught you to be." As she held her daughter, Laura's mind raced. How could she explain the situation to Emma? How could she protect her from the complexities of a world that sometimes punished kindness? "Is David going to be okay?" Emma mumbled into Laura's shoulder. Laura pulled back, looking into Emma's eyes. "I hope so, honey. The doctors are taking care of him. We can pray for him, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Can we visit him in the hospital?" Laura hesitated. "We'll see, sweetie. For now, why don't we finish our breakfast?" As they returned to the kitchen, the cheerful mood of earlier had evaporated, replaced by a tense silence. Laura tried to maintain a calm demeanor for Emma's sake, but inside, her thoughts were in turmoil. The rest of the morning passed in a haze. Laura found herself constantly checking her phone, half expecting another call from the police. Emma, too, was uncharacteristically quiet, her usual weekend exuberance dampened by the morning's events. It wasn't until early afternoon that Laura realized they couldn't stay cooped up in the apartment forever. She forced herself to put on a brave face, turning to Emma with a smile. "Emma, honey, why don't we go for a walk? Get some fresh air?" Emma perked up slightly at the suggestion. "Okay, Mommy." As they stepped out of their building, Laura felt a weight lift from her shoulders. They strolled down the street together, heading toward the park. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, golden glow over the neighborhood, making the familiar streets and trees feel comforting and safe. At the park, Emma ran to the swings, her laughter filling the air as Laura gave her a gentle push. They played together, Laura joining Emma in a game of tag that left them both breathless and laughing. For a moment, the strange events of the past few days melted away, and they enjoyed the simplicity of just being together. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the playground. Laura and Emma walked back home hand in hand. Though Laura still couldn't shake a faint, lingering unease, she was grateful for this moment of peace. She sensed, however, that their lives had been touched by something larger than a simple act of kindness, a feeling that would stay with her as events continued to unfold, changing their lives in ways she could never have anticipated. The next day, as the soft morning light filtered through their kitchen window, Emma sat at the table, her schoolbooks spread before her while Laura tapped away on her laptop nearby. The quiet between them felt unusually heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Finally, Emma broke the silence, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom, will David be okay?" Laura looked up, her expression softening as she met Emma's worried gaze. She took a deep breath, setting her work aside and leaning closer to her daughter. "I hope so, sweetheart. Sometimes people fall on hard times, and they need a little extra help. The important thing is that you did a kind thing for him." Emma nodded, her face serious. "Do you think we'll see him again?" Laura opened her mouth to answer, but a knock at the door interrupted her. She exchanged a glance with Emma before standing up to answer it. When she opened the door, her breath caught. Standing there was Officer Thompson. But this time, he was accompanied by another man and woman. They were well-dressed, their expressions a mixture of anxiety and hope. "Good afternoon, Miss Bennett," Officer Thompson greeted her, his voice gentle. "I hope we're not interrupting. This is Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell. They have a few questions for you and Emma, if that's okay." Laura hesitated, glancing at Emma, who looked back with wide, curious eyes. "Of course," she said finally, stepping aside to let them in. As the group entered the living room, Laura gestured for everyone to sit down. Mr. Caldwell, a tall man with graying hair and a somber expression, glanced at his wife before speaking. "Miss Bennett, we understand that your daughter, Emma, recently met a man in the park named David," he began, his voice strained. "We believe that man might be our son, Daniel, who's been missing for almost a year." Emma's eyes widened. "David? You mean he's your son?" Mrs. Caldwell nodded, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, dear. Daniel went missing after a terrible accident last year. He suffered a head injury, and we were told he might have lost his memory. We've been searching for him ever since." Laura felt a surge of shock. She looked down at Emma, who was listening intently, her expression serious. "So, David is actually named Daniel?" Emma asked, her brows furrowing. "He didn't seem to remember anything. He was just, sad." Mr. Caldwell's face softened as he looked at Emma. "That's what we feared. The doctor said that if he were alive, he might not remember who he was or where he came from. We've been looking everywhere, hoping he might be found." Laura felt a pang of sympathy for the Caldwells, their pain and longing evident in their faces. She turned to Emma, who was watching the couple with compassion in her young eyes. "Emma," Laura said gently, "I think what you did for David, Daniel, was more important than we realized. You may have been the first person to show him kindness in a very long time." Mrs. Caldwell's eyes filled with tears as she reached over to clasp Emma's hands. "Thank you, Emma. Thank you for being so kind to our son. We were told he was taken to the hospital, and now we hope he'll start to remember." Emma squeezed Mrs. Caldwell's hands, her face determined. "I just wanted to help him. He seemed so sad and alone." Officer Thompson cleared his throat, looking at the family. "The hospital believes he may be regaining some memories. They're working with him now, trying to help him piece together what happened. He may not remember everything right away, but your presence could make a difference." Laura's heart ached as she watched the Caldwells. "Would you like us to come with you to the hospital?" Mr. Caldwell nodded, his eyes grateful. "It would mean a great deal to us. Emma, if you'd like, we would love for you to see him again." Emma's face lit up. "Really? I'd love to. Maybe he'll remember me, and I can remind him about the sandwich and the park." Laura couldn't help but smile at her daughter's optimism. "All right, then. We'll go with you." Together they made their way to the hospital, the air filled with a mix of hope, tension, and anticipation. When they arrived, they were directed to a quiet wing where Daniel was being treated. As they walked down the hallway, Laura felt a surge of nerves, but she kept a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder. The nurse led them to a room where Daniel was sitting up in bed, his gaze distant but more alert than before. When he saw his parents, a flicker of recognition seemed to pass over his face, but it quickly faded into confusion. "Daniel?" Mrs. Caldwell's voice trembled as she approached the bed. "It's Mom and Dad. We're here for you." Daniel looked at them, his brows knitting as if trying to pull a memory from deep within. His gaze shifted, landing on Emma, and his eyes softened. "Hey there, little lady," he murmured, his voice faint but warm. "I remember you. From the park." Emma stepped forward, her face lighting up. "Yes, it's me. I gave you my sandwich. You said I was special." Daniel's face softened even more, a glimmer of recognition returning. "You did, didn't you? I remember. It was peanut butter and jelly. It was nice." Laura watched as the Caldwells exchanged a hopeful glance, their eyes filled with unshed tears. Emma seemed to sense their emotions and looked at Daniel with a gentle smile. "Your name isn't David," she said softly. "It's Daniel. This is your mom and dad." Daniel's eyes widened slightly, and he looked at the couple before him. He lifted a trembling hand to his head, as if trying to recall something just out of reach. I remember a little," he whispered. "I don't know why, but you feel familiar." Mrs. Caldwell stepped closer, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Daniel, we've missed you so much. You've been gone for so long, but you're safe now." Emma reached for Daniel's hand, her small fingers curling around his. "You don't have to be alone anymore. Your family's here, and they're going to help you remember everything." Daniel's hand tightened around Emma's, and a hint of a smile touched his lips. "Thank you, Emma. I don't remember everything, but I know you helped me. You and that sandwich." Mr. Caldwell chuckled softly, a tear slipping down his cheek. "We'll take it one day at a time, son. We're just glad to have you back." As the family embraced, Laura felt a profound wave of peace washing over her. The room was filled with a quiet, almost sacred stillness, one that held years of longing, hope, and love unspoken. She glanced at Emma, standing close by, a glow of quiet pride illuminating her young face. Laura saw in her daughter's gaze the realization that her small, simple act of kindness had created something remarkable, something far beyond what either of them could have anticipated. But for Emma, this wasn't the end. As the visit came to a close and the group moved toward the door, Emma lingered, her eyes locked on Daniel with a look of resolve that belied her years. Just as they were about to leave, she tugged gently at Laura's hand, looking up with eyes full of determination and compassion. "Mom," she whispered, her voice soft but steady, "can we come back tomorrow? I think it might help him remember more if we keep visiting." Laura felt a warmth blossom in her chest as she saw the empathy shining in Emma's expression. She knelt down beside her daughter, resting a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder. "Of course, sweetheart," Laura replied gently, her own heart touched by the love and care her daughter was showing. "I think it would mean the world to him." And so, from that day forward, Emma and Laura made regular visits to see Daniel. Each time, they brought small reminders of warmth and familiarity. A homemade cookie, a simple drawing Emma had made, or even a flower picked from the park where they had first met him. They would sit with him, sharing little stories about the park and the small, special moments they had shared, helping Daniel rebuild his past, one memory at a time. As the days turned into weeks, their visits became a lifeline for Daniel. Emma's bright laughter and her gentle encouragement seemed to lift the shadows from his mind, and her presence brought a sense of joy and light to his room that was contagious. With every story she retold, every familiar smell or taste she shared, Daniel seemed to find a small piece of himself. And gradually, he began to stitch together the fragments of his life that had once felt so distant. Laura watched with quiet pride as her daughter poured her heart into each visit, and her own presence became a source of calm and steadiness for the Caldwells. She saw the gratitude in their eyes and felt the bond that was forming between the two families, a bond built on love, resilience, and hope. Together, Emma and Laura were like twin beacons in Daniel's journey of rediscovery. Slowly, carefully, they nurtured the flickers of his returning memories, guiding him as he took each tentative step toward reclaiming his true self. Laura knew this was only the beginning of Emma's journey. Her daughter's simple kindness had already changed so many lives, including their own. And each day as they walked hand in hand out of the hospital, Laura felt her own heart swell with pride and love for Emma, knowing that they were not only bringing light to Daniel's world, but helping to rebuild their own lives, one compassionate moment at a time. In the days following Daniel's reunion with his family, Emma and Laura's lives took on a new rhythm. Emma felt like a local celebrity, with friends and teachers at school constantly asking her about her heroic encounter with the man in the park. Laura, while proud, was cautious, watching closely to ensure Emma wasn't overwhelmed by all the attention. Yet, as time passed, not everyone in the community seemed pleased. Gossip and rumors started to spread, fueled by misunderstanding and, perhaps, a hint of envy. One afternoon, Laura returned home from work to find Emma sitting at the kitchen table, her usual spark subdued. She was drawing quietly, but Laura noticed the furrow in her brow. "Emma, honey, are you all right?" Laura asked, sitting beside her daughter. Emma looked up, her eyes clouded. "Mom, some of the kids at school said weird things about David. Daniel. They said their parents think he's dangerous, that he's just pretending to be someone else to get money." Laura's heart sank. She had hoped to shield Emma from the uglier side of public opinion, but the gossip had reached her anyway. She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes, people don't understand a situation, and they let fear take over. They don't realize how much Daniel has gone through. Emma nodded, but her frown remained. "But why would they think that? He's a good person, I know it." Laura pulled her daughter into a comforting hug. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. But people are quick to make judgments, especially when they don't have all the facts. What you did for Daniel was incredibly kind, and we know he's grateful. Try not to worry too much about what others say, okay?" Emma sighed and nodded. "Okay, Mom, but it still feels unfair." As the week wore on, Laura noticed subtle changes around the neighborhood. Friendly waves were sometimes replaced with tight-lipped smiles. People who had once chatted with them outside the building now averted their eyes. The Caldwells had received their fair share of scrutiny, too, as whispers circulated about the family's motives and how their wealth might have influenced the police. Laura decided it was time to address the issue head-on. She called the local community center to arrange a meeting, inviting neighbors, teachers, and parents from Emma's school. The Caldwells also agreed to attend, hoping to clarify the misunderstandings and express their gratitude publicly. The night of the meeting arrived, and the community center filled slowly with faces that Laura and Emma had known for years. Some people wore expressions of curiosity, while others looked guarded, even suspicious. Laura stood beside Emma, feeling her heart pound as they waited. The Caldwells took seats nearby, exchanging nervous glances as the murmur of conversation filled the room. Laura took a steadying breath, stepping forward to face the room. Her voice was calm but resolute as she began. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I know there's been a lot of confusion and concern over what happened with Daniel, the man Emma met in the park." She paused, her eyes scanning the familiar faces before her. Emma's only intention that day was to help someone she saw in need, and through her simple kindness, something extraordinary unfolded. We're here tonight because it's important for everyone to understand the truth. A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience as Officer Thompson, who had come to lend his support, stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice respectful but clear, "as someone directly involved in this case, I'd like to clarify a few things. Daniel Caldwell was a missing person, suffering from amnesia. He wasn't pretending to be someone else, or hiding who he was. His family was devastated by his disappearance, and thanks to Emma's act of kindness, he was finally able to reconnect with them after all this time." Laura glanced over at the Caldwells as Mrs. Caldwell rose, her hands trembling slightly. Her voice was emotional but steady as she addressed the crowd. "Our family owes everything to Emma and Laura. We understand the questions people may have, but please believe that our intentions are genuine. Emma's compassion set into motion events that helped our son begin to remember who he was. She reminded him, and us, that even in the darkest times, kindness can bring light and hope." Laura noticed a few faces in the crowd soften, some people exchanging thoughtful glances. But just as Mrs. Caldwell sat down, a sharp, cynical voice broke through the silence. "What if this is all just about money?" called out a middle-aged man from the back. "I mean, he's a wealthy man. How do we know this wasn't just some scheme?" Laura felt a surge of anger rise, but before she could respond, Mr. Caldwell stepped forward, his gaze firm and voice unwavering. "We're not here to take advantage of anyone, especially not a child who showed our son such kindness. We're here because we want to repay that kindness by giving back to the community that helped bring him home to us." A hush fell over the room as Emma, who had remained silent until now, lifted her hand. The crowd turned, eyes settling on her small figure as she took a deep breath, summoning courage from somewhere deep within. "All I did was share my sandwich," she said, her voice soft yet filled with sincerity. Daniel, was just hungry and alone. I wasn't thinking about anything else, and I don't want anything from him except to know he's okay." Her words, so simple yet filled with innocence, seemed to cut through the tension in the room. The man in the back who had spoken lowered his eyes, his expression softening with quiet understanding. Several people nodded, voices murmuring softly in agreement, moved by the purity of her intentions. As the meeting went on, more questions arose, each one answered patiently by Laura, the Caldwells, and Officer Thompson. With each response, the mood in the room gradually shifted. By the end of the night, people began to approach Emma, offering her kind words and even quiet apologies for any doubts they'd had. As the crowd thinned, Mrs. Gonzalez, their elderly neighbor, made her way over to Laura and Emma, her gaze warm and filled with admiration. She reached out to Emma, giving her a gentle, reassuring pat on the shoulder. "I'm sorry I ever doubted you, Emma," Mrs. Gonzalez said, her voice filled with genuine regret. "You've shown all of us what it truly means to be kind and selfless." "Thank you, dear." Laura felt a weight lift from her shoulders, knowing that the night's meeting had helped mend the misunderstandings. As she and Emma walked home under the dim glow of the streetlights, Laura wrapped her arm around her daughter, feeling an overwhelming sense of pride. "You were incredibly brave tonight, Emma," Laura whispered, squeezing her daughter's shoulder. "I couldn't be more proud of you." Emma looked up, her eyes thoughtful and shining with relief. "I just told the truth, Mom. I'm glad they understand now." Laura nodded, her heart swelling. "Sometimes, speaking the truth is all we can do, and it's the most powerful thing there is. You did that tonight, and you changed people's hearts." That night, after Emma drifted off to sleep, Laura sat by her daughter's bedside, reflecting on everything that had happened. She knew there would still be challenges and obstacles to face, but tonight had been a victory. It was a reminder of the strength found in honesty and the incredible resilience of kindness. As she watched Emma's peaceful expression, Laura realized with a quiet certainty that this was only the beginning of her daughter's journey. There, in the glow of the nightlight, she whispered a promise to herself and to Emma. They would continue to face the world together, trusting in the power of kindness, truth, and love, and in the quiet courage that would guide them through whatever came next. With the community's support restored and the rumors put to rest, the Caldwells approached Laura and Emma with a heartfelt proposal. Inspired by Emma's compassionate act, they wanted to establish a charitable foundation to honor the kindness she had shown to Daniel. They called it the Maya Caldwell Foundation, in recognition of the role Emma had played in helping Daniel rediscover his identity and, more importantly, a sense of hope. Emma was thrilled when the Caldwells explained their vision for the foundation. "We want to help people who feel forgotten," Mrs. Caldwell told her, "just like you helped Daniel when he needed it most." Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement at the thought of helping even more people. On a sunny Saturday morning, the family gathered at a local community center to announce the foundation's creation. The room was filled with neighbors, school friends, and community members who had come to show their support. As Emma stood in front of the crowd beside the Caldwells, Laura could see her daughter's nervousness and pride. She gave Emma an encouraging smile, letting her know she was right there with her. Emma took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice small but steady. "I never thought that sharing a sandwich would lead to something like this. All I wanted to do was help a friend. But now, thanks to the Caldwells and everyone here, we can help even more people." The crowd applauded warmly, and Emma's face lit up with pride. Afterward, Mr. Caldwell spoke, outlining the foundation's mission. "The Mia Caldwell Foundation will provide meals, shelter, and support for those experiencing homelessness and struggling with mental health. We want to make sure that nobody feels invisible. We will also be partnering with local schools to teach children about compassion and the power of small acts of kindness." The idea resonated deeply with the audience. The foundation's name became a symbol of hope for the community, and it soon gained support from people across the city who wanted to contribute to the cause. Laura found herself fielding phone calls and emails from local organizations, volunteers, and donors who wanted to be involved. She was amazed by how quickly the foundation was growing and how much interest it was sparking. In the weeks that followed, Emma's life took on a new rhythm. She became the foundation's young ambassador, helping plan events and brainstorming ways to reach more people in need. The Caldwells arranged for Emma to visit several community shelters and soup kitchens to better understand the challenges faced by people experiencing homelessness. At first, Emma felt nervous walking into the shelters, uncertain of what to expect. But as she spoke with the people there, she realized that they were just like her friend Daniel, kind and thoughtful, each with their own stories and struggles. Her nervousness quickly faded, replaced by a determination to help. One day, during a visit to a shelter, Emma met a woman named Grace, who had recently lost her job and her apartment. Grace's gentle smile and calm demeanor reminded Emma of her own mother, and they spent time chatting as Grace told her about her love for gardening and cooking. Emma listened carefully, touched by Grace's story and her gratitude for the foundation's support. As they left the shelter that evening, Emma turned to Laura, her face serious. "Mom, we have to do more. There are so many people like Grace who need help. I want the foundation to make a real difference." Laura knelt down, holding Emma's hands. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I think you're already making a difference more than you know. And with your determination, I believe the foundation will help a lot of people." The foundation's first major event was a food drive organized in partnership with local businesses and schools. Emma was deeply involved, spending hours after school preparing donation boxes, designing flyers, and even speaking at school assemblies to encourage her classmates to participate. Seeing her excitement and dedication, the community rallied around her, bringing in donations and volunteering their time. On the day of the event, the community center was buzzing with activity. Volunteers of all ages sorted and packed food items, and the shelves quickly filled with canned goods, pasta, and other essentials. Emma walked through the room, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude as she saw people working together to help those in need. As the event wound down, Mrs. Caldwell took Emma aside. "This is only the beginning, Emma," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thanks to you, we're already seeing how much a single act of kindness can ripple out into the world." Emma looked around at the bustling room, taking it all in. She had never imagined that her small act in the park could lead to something so big, so powerful. For the first time, she began to understand the impact her kindness had created, and she felt a sense of purpose and pride she hadn't known before. That evening, as Emma and Laura returned home, they sat together, talking about the day's success. "Mom," Emma said thoughtfully, "I want to keep doing this forever. I want to keep helping people and making sure nobody ever feels alone." Laura hugged her tightly, feeling overwhelmed by her daughter's heart and vision. "I think you will, Emma, and I'll be here, supporting you every step of the way." As the foundation continued to grow, so did Emma's confidence and sense of responsibility. She became a familiar face in the community, known for her big heart and willingness to help. Together, Emma, Laura, and the Caldwells began to dream even bigger, planning new initiatives and outreach programs that would extend their impact. The Mia Caldwell Foundation became more than just a name. It became a movement, a symbol of hope and compassion, uniting people from all walks of life with the simple mission of making the world a kinder place. As the Mia Caldwell Foundation continued to grow, Emma and the team began facing a series of new challenges. Although the foundation had gained community support and visibility, running it required a great deal of commitment, planning, and resilience. Emma quickly learned that helping people went beyond grand gestures. It involved hard work, dedication, and sometimes even navigating misunderstandings. One Friday afternoon, Emma sat in the foundation's small office, reviewing a list of upcoming events with Laura and the Caldwells. They were preparing for a charity auction to raise funds for the foundation's expansion, and Emma was excited to see how much money they could raise to support more people. But as she read through the list of items donated by local businesses, she felt a pang of worry. Some donations were smaller than expected, and she wondered if they'd meet their fundraising goals. "Is something wrong, Emma?" Laura asked, noticing her daughter's pensive expression. Emma looked up, biting her lip. "I just thought we'd have more things donated. I don't want people to think we aren't serious about helping." Mrs. Caldwell leaned in, her voice warm and reassuring. "Don't worry, Emma. These events can take time to gain momentum. This is only our first auction, and the more we do, the more people will want to help. You've already accomplished so much." Emma felt reassured by her words, but couldn't help wondering how they would meet their goal. Despite her young age, she had taken on the role of leader with sincerity, and she wanted everything to go well. With the Caldwell's support, she redoubled her efforts, reaching out to other local businesses and community members to invite them to the auction and encourage donations. The day of the auction arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. The community center was decorated with banners displaying the foundation's logo, and rows of tables showcased the donated items, from handcrafted jewelry to gift certificates for local restaurants. Guests were welcomed with warm smiles, and the event began with a speech from Mr. Caldwell about the foundation's mission and vision. Emma took her place on stage, heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. She felt a tremendous responsibility to make the event a success. As she looked out at the crowd, she saw familiar faces. neighbors, classmates, local shop owners, and friends from school who had come to support her cause. "Thank you all for coming," Emma began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "The Mia Caldwell Foundation means a lot to me because it's about showing kindness to people who need it most. Your support tonight will help us bring food, shelter, and hope to many more people." The crowd erupted in applause, and Emma felt a surge of pride. The auction proceeded smoothly, and as the evening progressed, Emma saw more and more people bidding enthusiastically. The energy in the room was contagious, and by the end of the night, they had surpassed their fundraising goal. Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement as she looked at the total amount raised, realizing they could do even more than they had planned. However, as the foundation's reach expanded, Emma also faced criticism from a few individuals who questioned her involvement and the foundation's mission. One afternoon at school, she overheard a group of classmates whispering nearby. "Why does Emma get so much attention just for being nice?" one girl muttered. "It's like she thinks she's better than everyone else." The comment stung, and Emma felt a mix of confusion and sadness. She hadn't sought recognition. All she wanted was to help people. Later, as she walked home with Laura, she shared her feelings, unsure how to handle the negativity. Laura stopped and knelt down, placing a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. "Sweetheart, sometimes when you do something big and brave, not everyone will understand it right away. People can feel jealous or uncertain. But remember, you're not doing this for praise. You're doing it to make a difference. Keep focusing on the people you're helping." Emma nodded, feeling comforted by her mother's words. That evening, as she helped organize supplies at the foundation's office, she noticed that the criticisms faded into the background when she focused on her work. Each meal packed, each supply gathered, and each smile she saw reminded her why she had started this journey. Despite the challenges, Emma's dedication only grew. The Caldwells worked closely with her, teaching her valuable lessons about patience, resilience, and perseverance. She spent weekends and afternoons after school at the foundation, working on new ideas for outreach programs and brainstorming ways to make the organization even stronger. Her confidence grew as she developed skills in public speaking, event planning, and community outreach. One of the foundation's initiatives was a monthly Day of Kindness, where volunteers went out to parks and public spaces, distributing care packages to those in need. Emma loved these days because they allowed her to connect with people directly. On one particular Day of Kindness, as she handed out blankets and hygiene kits to people in a downtown park, she saw the joy and gratitude on their faces, reinforcing her commitment to her cause. Over time, Emma's resilience in the face of challenges earned her even more admiration. People began to see her not just as a young girl with a big heart, but as a leader with a clear vision for the future. The foundation received recognition in local newspapers, and Emma was invited to speak at various events and share her story. With each new opportunity, Emma's message of kindness reached more people, inspiring other children and adults alike to get involved in their own communities. One evening, as Emma sat at the kitchen table with Laura, looking over their latest plans, she felt a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. "Mom, do you think we can keep doing this forever?" she asked, her eyes shining with determination. Laura smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's face. "I think as long as you keep that big heart of yours, there will always be people who need your kindness. And I'll be right here, cheering you on." Emma smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that the journey wouldn't always be easy, but with the support of her family, friends, and the foundation, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Her small act of kindness had grown into something bigger than she could have imagined, and she was determined to continue making a difference, one step at a time. As Emma prepared for the next steps in the foundation's journey, she felt a growing excitement for all the possibilities that lay ahead. The future was filled with challenges, but it was also filled with hope, kindness, and the chance to change lives, and that was more than she had ever dreamed of. As the Mia Caldwell Foundation grew, so did its impact on the community and beyond. Emma had become a local hero, inspiring people from all walks of life to think about kindness as a powerful tool for change. The Foundation's initiatives gained traction, and soon, requests for partnerships and support began pouring in from other cities. Emma, along with Laura and the Caldwell family, worked tirelessly to keep up with the Foundation's growth. The office bustled with activity as volunteers organized events, packed care packages, and coordinated with shelters. There was a sense of purpose in every task, and Emma thrived in her role, finding joy in every opportunity to help others. One sunny afternoon, Emma sat in the foundation's office with Laura and the Caldwells, going over final details for an upcoming fundraising event, the annual Gala of Hope. This gala was their largest event yet, meant to raise funds for expanding the foundation's services to more communities. Emma felt both excitement and nervousness at the thought of speaking in front of such a large crowd. "Are you ready, Emma?" Mr. Caldwell asked with a gentle smile, noticing her thoughtful expression. Emma took a deep breath and nodded. "I think so. I just want people to feel inspired and realize how much they can help others." Mrs. Caldwell reached over, giving her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "You have an incredible way with words, Emma. Speak from the heart, and everyone will listen." The evening of the Gala of Hope arrived, and the venue was transformed into an elegant space filled with twinkling lights and beautifully set tables. Emma, dressed in a simple yet graceful outfit, stood backstage, rehearsing her speech under her breath. She looked out at the crowd that had gathered: families, local leaders, business owners, and supporters of the foundation, all united by their belief in the mission of kindness. When it was finally her turn to speak, Emma took a deep breath, stepping onto the stage as applause filled the room. She glanced at Laura and the Caldwells in the audience, their supportive smiles giving her the courage she needed. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Emma began, her voice strong yet heartfelt. The Mia Caldwell Foundation started with a small act of kindness, a shared sandwich in the park. I never expected that helping one person could lead to something so big. But over the past year, I've learned that even the smallest actions can make a huge difference. Each of you here tonight has the power to bring hope and kindness into someone's life. Emma paused, seeing the rapt attention of the audience, then continued. "Tonight, we're not just raising money. We're building a future where everyone feels cared for, where everyone has a place, and we can make that future happen together. Thank you for believing in this mission." As she finished, the crowd rose in a standing ovation, their applause echoing through the room. Emma felt a wave of relief and pride wash over her. She knew that her words had reached people, and that together they could create lasting change. The gala was a resounding success, raising enough funds to open new kindness centers in neighboring communities. As the foundation expanded, Emma continued to balance her school life with her responsibilities, learning to manage her time and stay grounded. She became a role model to her classmates, encouraging them to volunteer and get involved in their own ways. One afternoon, as she prepared for another day of kindness, she noticed a small crowd gathering around her at school. Her classmates, inspired by her story, began asking questions about how they could help. Emma was overjoyed and shared ideas with them, from volunteering at local shelters to organizing school drives for food and supplies. Her friend Sarah, who had been by her side since the early days, looked at her with admiration. "Emma, you're changing the world, and it's not just here, it's everywhere." Emma smiled, her heart full of gratitude. "I just wanted to help, and now we're all doing it together. Imagine what we can accomplish." As the foundation's reach spread, Emma's story began inspiring people beyond her community. Media outlets covered her work, sharing her message of kindness across the country. Letters began pouring in from people of all ages, expressing how Emma's story had motivated them to make a difference in their own neighborhoods. Emma and her family took time to read these letters, touched by the heartfelt messages and the growing wave of compassion sparked by her simple act. One letter, in particular, stood out to Emma. It was from a girl named Lily in a small town across the country, who shared her own story of helping a homeless man in her neighborhood. Lily had started a small group at her school to raise awareness about homelessness, inspired by Emma's journey. She ended her letter with, "Thank you for showing me that kindness matters, Emma. I hope to be like you someday." Emma held the letter close, her heart swelling with pride and a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that the foundation was more than just a place. It was a movement, inspiring others to see kindness as a powerful way to change lives. As Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her here, she felt a deep sense of hope. She had grown from a young girl sharing a sandwich to a leader bringing compassion and hope to others. The challenges, the criticisms, and even the hardships had only strengthened her resolve, showing her that kindness could overcome any obstacle. That evening, as she sat with Laura in their cozy living room, Emma expressed her feelings. "Mom, I didn't know how much one act of kindness could grow, but now it feels like a part of me. I want to keep doing this, no matter what." Laura wrapped an arm around her daughter, her eyes filled with pride. "You've touched so many lives, Emma, more than you'll ever know. And I believe you'll continue making the world a kinder place, one small step at a time." The two sat in comfortable silence, their hearts full of gratitude and excitement for what lay ahead. Emma's journey was only beginning, but she knew that as long as she held on to her kindness and hope, the future would be bright. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the warmth of her family and the love of her community, Emma knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, creating a legacy of compassion, one small act at a time. As the years passed, the Mia Caldwell Foundation continued to grow, reaching communities all across the nation. Emma's impact on her hometown had blossomed into a national movement, with kindness centers, food drives, and support programs serving thousands of people. Through it all, Emma remained the heart of the foundation, her vision as clear and unwavering as ever, a world where compassion knows no boundaries. By the time Emma reached high school, she had inspired countless individuals, both young and old, to see the power of kindness. Schools adopted her story in their curricula, teaching children the importance of empathy and community. Each kindness center that opened bore her name, and her story became a beacon of hope for communities looking to make a positive difference. Laura watched with awe and pride as her daughter became a symbol of compassion. She often thought back to that first day in the park, remembering how a simple sandwich had changed everything. Emma's journey had been a testament to the profound impact of small acts of kindness, and Laura knew that her daughter had achieved something extraordinary. One summer evening, as they sat together on the porch of their now much-loved family home, Laura asked Emma a question that had been on her mind. "Emma, do you remember that day in the park with David, the very first time you shared your sandwich?" Emma nodded, a soft smile spreading across her face. "I'll never forget it, Mom. It feels like just yesterday. I didn't know what would come of it, but looking back, I can see how everything started with that one choice." Laura leaned closer, her voice filled with admiration. "You've created something beautiful, Emma. A world where kindness is celebrated, where people know they're not alone. You've turned one simple act into a legacy." Emma took her mother's hand, her gaze warm and thoughtful. "But I didn't do it alone. I had you, and I had everyone who believed in this mission. And together, we made a difference." As the stars began to twinkle overhead, Laura and Emma shared a quiet moment, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. Emma knew that while her work with the foundation would continue, she had achieved something timeless. She had created a ripple of kindness that would echo far beyond her lifetime, a legacy that would inspire generations to come. Years later, as the Mia Caldwell Foundation continued to flourish, people everywhere would remember Emma's story, a young girl who saw someone in need and chose to help, sparking a movement of compassion that changed the world. And through it all, Emma would remain true to her vision, carrying forward her message, that kindness, no matter how small, has the power to transform lives and build a brighter, more compassionate future. This story concludes here. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on the heartfelt stories I'm dedicated to bringing to you. Your support is a precious motivation for me to continue this journey, and I am truly grateful to have you as part of it.